All right, everybody. Hi, it's Jason Arkles from the Sculptor's Funeral. And today we're going to do a little video tour of the Church of Orsanmichele. And this is going to be sort of a companion piece to the podcast. I think it's episode number 41 on Orsanmichele, just to give you a little bit of a visual reference to this fantastic edifice. And so as you can see, it's sort of a big boxy-like structure, conveniently located between the Duomo and Piazza Signoria. And you can see in the images that the top two floors are quite large and would be the grain storage for when the church was actually a granary. Now it's a church, and we're going to take a look at the 14 fantastic niche sculptures that adorn the four sides of the church. And we're going to start with Ghiberti's John the Baptist, done around 1414, 1415. The first large-scale bronze statue cast in 1,000 years in Italy. It is a fantastic work. Note that it's fairly Gothic in design, late International style, which is sort of Ghiberti's trademark style. We're going to go to the central niche now, and this used to hold St. Louis of Toulouse by Donatello. Donatello designed the tabernacle, the framing around it, but now it houses Verrocchio's Christ and St. Thomas, or Thomas touching the wounds of Christ. And of course, this would be the patron saint of lawyers, Doubting Thomas. Show me the evidence, right? Very clever. This is actually one of the later statues on the facade. Next to it is actually the very last statue that was placed on the facade of Orsanmichele, and this is St. Luke by John Bologna, done all the way in 1602. For reference, the earliest statue on the building dates from 1399, so it spans a good 200 years, the decoration of these 14 niches. And in fact, there were some sculptures earlier than that as well that were subsequently replaced. And then we walk around the corner and we come to, kind of a strange, odd-looking St. Peter. Now, this has been attributed to Brunelleschi, it's been attributed to Donatello, and it's been attributed to both of them, maybe Brunelleschi designing and Donatello carving. And nowadays, people are saying, well, it might not be any of that. It might have been designed by Brunelleschi, but carried out by a sculptor named Bernardo Ciuffagni, who was active at the time in Florence and actually worked alongside Donatello on the facade of the Duomo. But nobody knows. But note the background, though, the background of this niche. See the colored stone inlay in the back of the niche, creating sort of these perspective geometric designs. This is probably the earliest example of perspective done in inlay like this, although, of course, now in Florence it's kind of everywhere. And then we go down to the first work we come to by Nani da Banco. And it's St. Philip. Nani da Banco died young. He was a pretty immense talent. He was right alongside Donatello up to a certain point. In fact, they share quite a bit of idiosyncrasies. You could tell that they were learning from each other. They both have sort of almost the same flaws as well. Notice the limp wrist on St. Philip. We'll see that limp wrist again and again in Nani's work, but also in Donatello's early work. And here we come to Nani da Banco's masterpiece, the Four Crowned Saints, the patron saints of sculptors, by the way. And here we see four late Roman sculptors awaiting their fate, their martyrdom. Probably the most Roman of the early Florentines. Nani da Banco was really looking towards the classics for inspiration. But of course, we love him most of all these days for the fantastic little predella, which is the little relief. The relief sculpture down below the Quattro Coronati, very famous depiction of masons and sculptors at work. You see a mason on the left, he's building a brick wall, and then another mason is sort of using a tool called a violino to drill a hole into a column. Then you got another guy using a square and a compass to design a column capital. And then finally you have a sculptor with a little sort of a pick sculpting a large child, or puto. Very famous work. And then we come to what has to be my favorite. All the way down, right next to Nani, we have Donatello's St. George, that game-changing sculpture. This is the one that everyone says is the first truly Florentine Renaissance sculpture. And we can feel, right? We can feel that it's different from all the sculptures we've seen before it. The inner psychology of the figure looking off into the distance, the fantastic feeling of weight and solidity to the figure that isn't hidden by drapery. And of course, down below we have the fantastic predella of St. George slaying the dragon, the first recorded instance of staccato relief, a relief style that Donatello in fact invented. And it also incorporates linear perspective in its design as well. It's important to remember that staccato is not the same as linear perspective, but they work well together. Yeah, look at that Donatello. Ugh, he's good. He's good. Anyway, moving around the corner, we come to the second of 3 bronze statues that Ghiberti did. This is the St. Matthew. Nice large figure. And this is probably the most Renaissance-flavored sculpture that Ghiberti ever did. It's the most he ever did to break away from the international Gothic style and sort of catch up with everybody else of his generation. But interestingly, his third bronze sculpture, St. Stephen, was done later than the Matthew, but you can see a clear return to the international Gothic style, especially in the drapery and in the Gothic swoop. He's not standing in contrapposto; he's standing in a Gothic swoop, as they call it. And then here's another work by Nani da Banco, Saint Eligio, the patron saint of ironmongers and horseshoers. It's okay. Now look at this. Look at the corner here. This is quite interesting. On each of the 4 corners, yeah, thumbs up. On each of the 4 corners of the Facade of Orsanmichele, we find 4 small reliefs carved right into the pietraforte, which is the name of this type of stone. Each of the 4 reliefs represent the 4 seasons. I believe this is, I think it's summer. I'm not sure. I see flowers. Could be spring. Could be summer. I'm not sure. It's definitely not winter. Anyway, on each of the 4 corners, there's a representation of the 4 seasons. And this alludes to this building's original use as a granary and grain market and food market. Now we turn the corner, and we have another work by Donatello. Not that bicycle, but there we go. There it is, the Saint Mark. Now this is a work that he carved. Take a look at this. This is a work that he carved only 3 or 4 years before he did the St. George, but they seem worlds different, right? You've got your standard, very early Renaissance, toga, but notice that this figure is in a clear contrapposto. Notice how the toga actually helps reinforce the solidity of the weight-bearing leg, the flutes of the drapery almost acting like a fluted column, in contrast to the movement of the drapery around the other leg, the non-weight-bearing leg. This is one of the earliest uses of contrapposto in Renaissance Florence on a large scale. Now, we had seen contrapposto all the way back to Andrea Pisano, but this is the first time it's been done on a work so prominently displayed. And this is for the Linen Weavers Guild, and this is the one that the guild had a big problem with in terms of the facial features. No one really liked it in the guild when Donatello unveiled this, but when Donatello unveiled it to the guild, it wasn't in the niche, nice and high up like we see it now. It was down at ground level. And so the optical corrections that Donatello made to this sculpture, which would make it look natural when viewed from below, looked very, very strange to everyone when you looked at it straight on. But Donatello figured that one out and got the guild to come around to his side. Now we come to a work, this is the statue of St. James by Niccolo Lamberti, one of the older generation. He competed with Brunelleschi and Ghiberti and Jacopo della Quercia for the commission of the bronze doors. He was obviously one of the 5 that did not win, and he was sort of an older generation, sort of fairly solidly Gothic. I believe he was from Milan as well, which is an interesting thing. You get sculptors coming down into Florence at the later decades of the 14th century, simply because there weren't enough sculptors to meet the demands of all the building projects: Orsanmichele, the Duomo, the Campanile, the baptistry. And so people like Niccolo Lamberti would enter Florence and find success as a sculptor here. We can say the same thing for the sculptor of this next work, and this is a very famous work. It's called the Madonna of the Roses. As you can see, there's the Madonna, and there's the little Jesus, and he's playing with some roses. This is a sculpture by Giovanni Tedesco, or Johnny Germany. This is what his name translates into, Germany John. And of course, he was from Germany. He came down just like Niccolo Lamberti did, looking for work in prosperous Florence. And this became a very prominent and much revered statue. Orsanmichele, of course, was the center of the worship of the Madonna in Florence, not only for its painting by Bernardo Daddi inside Orcagna's tabernacle, but also because of this beautiful work made in 1399. Interestingly, down at the base, there's an inscription in Latin, but basically it translates to, one day some kid climbed on this and broke the statue, and the townspeople of Florence were so enraged that they gathered around him and beat him to death. So let that be a lesson to you. Don't climb on the statuary, I think, is the meaning of that inscription, sort of a warning to the drunken American tourists now visiting Florence. I hope they've studied their Latin. And then we come to the last work on the niche. This is by Baccio di Montelupo, who was a schoolmate of Michelangelo. He worked in the Medici Garden alongside Michelangelo and people like Torrigiani back in the day when Lorenzo the Magnificent sponsored the most talented and brightest young apprentices of Florence and helped them get their start in their careers. And so this is a guy that worked alongside Michelangelo, knew him well, and of course later in life was very heavily indebted to him stylistically. Not so much in this work. And that's Orsanmichele in a nutshell. 14 fantastic statues. You can go around this whole thing in 2 minutes and have time to spare. And if you're interested in learning a little bit more about Orsanmichele, certainly check out the website, sculptorsfuneral.com, and find the Orsanmichele episode. All right, thanks for watching.